Welcome, Linda and Brad. So Linda P. Jones is the CEO of Be Wealthy and Smart. She is an author of 2 books, acclaimed podcaster, and America's Wealth Mentor. Her book, 3 Steps to Quantum Wealth, The Wealth Hierarch's Guide to Financial Freedom by Investing in Cryptocurrencies, was an international bestseller. And You're Already a Wealth Hierarch is on the list of all-time best wealth books by Book Authority. We had her earlier this year in one of our Link to Learns, and since then I've been a fan of her podcast, Be Wealthy and Smart, so I highly recommend listening to it. It is mostly 8 to 15-minute episodes, but very insightful. And Brad is the founder of Digital Perspectives. He has quickly amassed a following on social media and YouTube of over 288,000 followers and subscribers, and over 40 million views. Brad has had his work cited in Yahoo, Forbes, featured guest on Strensberry Research, to name a few. He's investing in crypto, blockchain, fintech, gold, and fine arts. This has become a true passion of his. He is working to combine news, education, and market commentary to give you his digital perspectives. I've also looked at some of his YouTube videos, and he does an amazing job at explaining trending topics, so I leave you with them.
Down here, Karim. There we go.
Here we are, Brad and Linda. It's a total mess out there, a total mess in so many different ways. We want to get a perspective. We want to get an idea. So we've heard over and over again over the last couple of days that it is a mess. Surprisingly enough, though, that we did some polls out there during the course of the conversation. One of the questions out there was like, how are you going to change your investment thesis allocations after the FTX fallout? And surprisingly, we anticipated that 80 to 90% of the audience would say, I'm done, I'm leaving this place, never doing anything again. But it was actually 50-50. People said, no, I'm going to continue to go down this path. Other people were a little bit wary and said, no, it's not something that I want to continue to do. But also during the past conversations, we've heard about various new technologies that are developing, and there is still a lot of hope out there. We just have to make sure that we understand where we are coming from and what our intention is. And so as we look forward into this future, we're wrapping up 2022, which has been tumultuous to say the very least, but we anticipate 2023 still maybe the first Q to be a little bit shaky as people look at their books and valuations, and the market continues to react not only to inflation and downturns in the US economy, but I think the global economy is also feeling some of the reeling and aftermath of what we've seen in the US, and will catch up and announce numbers that perhaps are not that positive. Having kept that in mind, though, Linda and Brad, you're seeing things from your perspective, and we'd like for you to add your thoughts and how do people actually manage themselves and their relationship to wealth and wealth generation, and what are some of the things that they need to think through as they look forward to continue accumulating, developing, and creating generational wealth for the future, for themselves, their families, and their loved ones? And how do we need to, what kind of lens should we be looking at as we continue into 2023, putting 2022 in hindsight? I'll leave it for you to have this discussion and pop up as necessary. Linda, Brad, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brad.
Oh, you okay? I'm going to let you go first. Okay. Well, first I want to say thank you, Karim. Thank you to Link 2. And I want to say thank you to Chris, Andrew, and Rob. I was so glad that I caught that conversation. That was an incredible conversation. I want to celebrate the 108 people in here that I believe have one of the greatest skills that any human being can have, and it's awareness. You're asking the question today about where we are in this market, how we're feeling, what are we doing about this turbulent situation we're in. You know, knowledge and empowerment. These are not, these are not breaking news things. I understand that, but I just want to reinforce to everybody, as somebody who, shares information every day from a YouTube channel, as an educator, the fact that you're in this space, in this meeting today, to me, tells me you're not just a speculator, but you have the kind of awareness that says there's something here, and there very much is something here. And whether it's in private equity or whether it's in the crypto digital asset space, there are new technologies that are being rolled out. And I believe that we are really at the precipice of watching a major keystone moment take place with this technology that's already happened with the internet, but hasn't happened yet with blockchain or digital assets. And it's the adoption by governments. And I think we're going to see that very soon. But before we get any deeper, I want to throw it to Linda and give her a moment to get in here.
Yeah, I think this has been an extremely difficult year. I mean, we've seen interest rates increase steadily, which is, had repercussions on every market. And between the stock market, crypto, private equity, we've seen, really sharp pullbacks, which has been very difficult for many people. There was no place to hide this year. I mean, the bond market, the 60-40 allocation between stocks and bonds had the worst performance it's had in 100 years. There was just nowhere to hide. I mean, you got hit no matter if you had real estate. I mean, wherever you were, there was just nowhere to hide. So this has been a really difficult year. But having said that, that also means that assets are priced a lot lower than they were a year ago. So that brings opportunity. So if you have fresh cash to invest, stocks on NASDAQ are 30% below where they were a year ago. Private equity is being repriced. We're seeing companies, the quality of Ripple, maybe the premier company on your platform, be priced at a $15 billion valuation, which is the level that Discord is valued at. I mean, that's insane to me. So the opportunities that we have are incredibly amazing. And when we look at crypto, the FTX debacle, in my opinion, was pure fraud from the beginning. It was a Bernie Madoff situation. It was a bad actor, a bad group of actors. And I did a Twitter thread about that, talking about payment for order flow, which I think was the big picture scam that they were trying to pull off across crypto and the stock market, because it's riskless profitability for them, if you will. And so I think that tarnished crypto a little bit, because the people not in the know kind of grouped that all together with crypto and just said, oh, crypto's bad, crypto's a scam, crypto's this, that. No, that was FTX, and that was a unique situation that was very unfortunate. And I think more is going to come out about that. But beside that, we have opportunities in crypto because we're in a 4-year crypto cycle. So this 4th year that we just had is the down year. Usually we have 3 years up, 1 year down. So we are now getting through this down year. We're going to have 3 up years in crypto that are going to blow your mind, I think. So I'm really excited about the opportunities that we have right now, because everything is so well priced. And if you have fresh money to put to work, I think you're going to be really pleased in a few years.
Well, Linda, I just want to continue to your point, just to have you really make it clear for everybody, because I know we've spoke about this offline. When you talk about that PFOF, that payment for order flow, and what they really tried to do here, I hear you from a macro sense saying, hey, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. What you saw out of FTX was criminal and all of that business, but this technology has a real use case and purpose going forward. Is that what you're saying here?
Oh, yeah. Well, of course, every crypto has its different situation, different problem that it's trying to solve. And then we have cryptos that are pure speculation that are probably going to disappear because they really weren't created to do anything but try to just, move value. But when we talk for payment for order flow, it's like a toll booth. So what happens when you place an order for a stock, the stock order goes to a market maker. Well, that market maker now is redirecting to a toll booth that's charging a toll. And that toll booth they wanted to put into crypto too. So when you hear a company like Robinhood say we have free trades, well, they're not really free trades. They're being directed to a toll booth, and you're paying more than you would have paid if they didn't have payment for order flow. And the market makers behind the scenes like Citadel, who pay Robinhood 80% of their profits and control 40% of all of the trades on the New York or on all stock exchanges, 40% go through Citadel. This has become a huge tax for people, if you will, but Citadel is getting very rich. And I think that what FTX wanted to do was take over payment for order flow for stocks and crypto. And a lot of people just, threw money at them and said, I'm in. They paid money to the regulators to cover them so that they could have a free pass, if you will. And then the market dropped, and Alameda, the hedge fund, the sister hedge fund, was exposed for all its bad trades. And then they were in a cash flow crunch and problem. So then they approached Binance, and Binance tweeted out, no, we're not going to support you. And that's when there was a run on the bank. And then everything was discovered with the fraud at FTX. But it was fraudulent from the beginning. They had no oversight. They had no board of directors. They did not have proper compliance officers. And they had a bet for $3 million on their balance sheet listed as an asset. So anyone who would have looked at the balance sheet would have said, there's something wrong here. This is not a normal balance sheet. I mean, you just can't say that people did due diligence. They just didn't. So they were wanting to be in on this deal to control PFOF for crypto and for stocks. And I think that's what that was really all about.
I think it was such a great overview of what took place for anybody that hadn't seen the thread of exactly what FTX's mission was to do, was to monopolize the gates on and off to this entire market. It's quite frightening. Not to mention the data collection that they would be getting on all those buy and sell purchases, all those orders of payment flow that would be going on in that data collection. They turn around and sell for God knows what. But when I think about Karim's question, I come back to this, Linda. What are we doing now? How are we interpreting this turbulent market? I want to share with people what I shared the other night in our private mastermind group, which is I have consolidated a little bit because things are a little shaky. I am hugely bullish on this digital asset space. I am hugely bullish, and obviously, on private equity too. I hold many different things, right? Gold is also something. Fine art is something, right? I think it counters the risk appetite that I have for my portfolio, which is in digital assets. But when I think about this whole approach to where I am during this turbulent time, I've kind of consolidated in these tokens where I was a little more horizontal in my portfolio. I came back to the XRP, XLM, kind of my center of how I came into this space. I'm not telling anybody else what to do, but Karim asked us, so what are you doing, Linda?
Yeah, well, I think that the last couple of years in crypto have allowed us to have an incredible buying opportunity. I mean, a lot of people know XRP is my very favorite crypto. I wrote a book about it, and it has been incredible to be able to invest under 70 cents for a lot of the last 2 years, under 25 cents for a lot of the time. I mean, I think we're going to look back in amazement, 3, 4, 5 years from now and just say, I can't believe that we were able to pick it up at that price. Same thing with Ripple stock, can't believe that we could get in at these valuations. I've been using this time to invest more in the assets that I already have because the prices have gotten even better than they were a year ago. So it's not that I've really delved out into different things. I've just, averaged down into the things that I already love. And I'm just really excited because as I look at the crypto space, for example, between now and 2025, we're going to have the ISO 2002 regulations really come into play. And that's just a form of the new financial system of messaging. It's just messaging and a standardized format for messaging so that the money can move with with direction and with a standardized system so it can be understood at both ends and have zero errors. And so that's going to come more into being between now, 2025, and then 2030 is really like where I see we're going to be using a lot of these technologies that we've been talking about. A lot of the digital revolution is going to have happened, something I call the quantum age, which is just all the new technology and the digitization of money and of value and the internet of value. All of that is coming into being between now and 2030. So we just are, like everyone has said, we're early. We have amazing opportunities, and I just have used that opportunity to invest more. But Brad, what other things are you seeing that look exciting?
Well, first of all, I'm doing exactly what you're doing. I've, consolidated the things I really truly believe in, and I'm getting much heavier in them than I already was because I believe in those things that I mentioned before. And I couldn't be more excited. I am a perma bull on the utility and application of the technologies that are out here for the projects and digital assets that I believe actually have application. But Linda, I want to shift the conversation a little bit because I want to bring in a little bit of what Rob, Andrew, and Chris had talked about, and then I want to blend it in a little bit with what Karim's asked us about, because we talked about how we're handling where we are in this moment. We heard Rob and Chris and Andrew talk about really what needs to happen and kind of where we are in that progression of things. And one of the things that really gets talked about all the time is the hindrance of the lack of clarity of regulation in this space. So when I think of that, I think to myself, regulation has to mature with this technology as well, right? Because regulation by enforcement with Gary Gensler and the SEC is like a whack-a-mole approach, right? I happen to believe that, we should be regulating activities and not entities the way Gary Gensler is. And it should be more like a cop on the highway. If everybody's KYC AML, you got your license plate and your driver's license, right? You can drive on the highway and do whatever you want. But if you start speeding, the cop pulls you over. As vice versa, if you're on a financial network, you do suspicious activity, we need to see inside the wallet who actually holds that wallet. You know what I'm saying? Like there should be this kind of activities approach. And I believe that gets into reg tech and regulatory technology being on these networks as nodes. Could you speak to that a little bit, Linda?
Yeah, well, I think that, people talk about regulation, and as Brad Garlinghouse says, we have regulation. I mean, we do. Exactly. Have to comply with banking regulations. And so there is regulation out there. I think that's somewhat confusing. It's not that crypto isn't regulated, but here's the thing, they've put out the different white paper from, the White House has talked about different things. One of the things that was very obvious is they do not approve of proof of work. And that's telling us that Bitcoin is going to have some issues if we get regulation. Now, I think Ripple and XRP and a lot of our ISO 20022 cryptos are already following regulations. So they're not really going to be adversely impacted. But I think really the energy that Bitcoin uses is not going to be okay in the future. And that is something that people really aren't talking about. But that is going to be a major problem, that you cannot be using the energy that Bitcoin requires. And so that's one thing that I see that's going to be a major change when we get regulation. The other thing is who's actually going to be in charge of regulating these companies, because, the SEC really hasn't done anything, and they've been, as we've talked about ad nauseum, all the problems with that. But the CFTC is probably going to be who regulates certain companies in the future. And Brad has said that's probably the correct regulators for them, for Ripple. So, I think regulation is going to be in some ways a non-event for many companies, but for, mainly Bitcoin and proof of work, I think that is where we're going to see the major shift. What do you think, Brad?
I think that's a great point about proof of work, and certainly Bitcoin. We have seen a target on its back for quite some time, Linda. It doesn't look good. Now, what I'll say to that is to, counter that argument for those that are screaming at the screen right now going, don't say that, that's not going to happen. And I'm not saying that it is, but look, we've heard enough from the EU, the United States, and other areas about the energy consumption about Bitcoin, that proof of work is a massive issue, however you slice the pie. And if I was invested heavily in it, I would not turn a blind eye to that fact, right? Just like I don't turn a blind eye to the fact that I'm heavily invested in XRP and I'm watching this case, like a one-eyed wallpaper hanger. But the reality is, I'm trying to focus and look full disclosure at what's going on here. And speaking about proof of work and how that may be met with regulations and those types of things, I'm also thinking about this. What about USD Tether? The reason I really consolidated isn't really just because of the volatility of the market. I happen to believe, and I'm taking a chance, I usually dollar cost average and stay in my spot, on my portfolio, but I happen to believe that there is going to be a moment where we have still not seen how the U.S. government, the Department of Justice, Department of Treasury, right, have not really told us clearly how they feel about USD Tether offering a product of the Federal Reserve, which is a digital dollar staked 1-to-1. Can you talk about that, Linda?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really great point, and that is the thing that you and I have talked about will probably bring in the next problem that will bring in regulation, because there always seems to be a big problem, and FTX was a problem, but I don't think it's the problem that is going to bring in this particular regulatory angle. I think USDT, because it is a stable coin that hasn't been audited. Now they've done some assurances, but they don't have a real audit. And part of that problem is that the auditors are not comfortable auditing a crypto company because there aren't clear regulations. So they don't really know what they need to be doing. So this is sort of a catch-22 that Tether's in right now, but they're trying to say, oh yes, we do have 1-to-1, assets behind us, but should there be any kind of a run on Tether, it could, create a domino effect with other cryptocurrencies. And we are anticipating that there will be some sort of debacle like this that sort of takes everything down sharply and quickly right before everything sort of rises from the ashes like a phoenix. And then we get regulation, we get the proper cryptos that are really solving problems, have utility, following regulations, are on the up and up, legitimate. Those are, going to go on from there and thrive. So what do you think about Tether, Brad?
Well, I don't know, but it doesn't look good, right? I know that the Department of Justice has literally reached out to Tether, and Tether has had their law firm send a letter saying, we're not doing or complying with anything you want. And it's literally that bold when they respond to the Department of Justice. Now, again, I've been trying to get people to talk me out of the idea, like, it's like someone convinced me how USD Tether is not offering publicly a digital counterfeit dollar because you're not verifying third party, your reserves are there, and you're denying the Department of Justice of the United States the ability to see it. I want to float people this idea that a scenario that could take place, it's plausible, right? And it doesn't mean that the space goes away, but we've heard Brad Garlinghouse from Ripple and others say 99% of the tokens out here don't solve a problem, and at some point they're going to go away. I agree with that. And I'm paraphrasing, but I agree with that idea. Here's an idea. What if USD Tether gets a few subpoenas and the reserves don't check out, and the 20,000+ tokens you're in that really don't have a use case, they're actually running as a unregistered ICO, making money off of speculative trading, and they shut down the USD Tether, and that's the only way in and out of that little micro cap altcoin. That would suffocate 90% of the market right there. Then you bring in something that gets the blessing of either Congress, the Treasury, right? Whatever the protocol would be to bless it. And then it's maybe the USD coin or something of that nature operating as a digital retail dollar, multi-layers away from government control. That I'll just leave it at there. Your thoughts, Linda?
Well, Tether I see as an alternative to the US dollar. Elon Musk has talked about having different cryptocurrencies. That is a good thing, that we have a choice and we don't have a monopoly on the dollar. As you know, the US dollar is kind of losing that hegemony status because the BRICS are bringing in an alternative currency system, one that could give more of a level playing field. And that's something that we have to deal with our currency as well. So this may be related to that. And I don't know whether that's going to, happen at the same time, but there are other things that can help bridge some of those cryptocurrencies that might be impacted negatively by Tether. I think there's ways, specifically, I think Flare has some ways to bring in cryptos that sort of need a bridge, if you will. And so I think, we'll have to see how it plays out. I do think we have, some scary event, but I do think that it's going to turn out fine for, as I said, the ones that are already ISO 20022, because we know that those are the ones that were already chosen to be in the new financial system. And so that they communicate and they are all set, all ready to go. And so, we're staying away from the really speculative cryptos, and we're staying with the ones that are more mainstream for that reason.
I think you make a great point, and I'm always reminded of the adage, a revolution comes from within. And when I think of, companies like Ripple or working with the digital asset XRP, Ripple Net that's been built, these things have been done as a sense of building a market infrastructure that can work within the system. And those are the things that I'm truly interested in. Things like, and I know you are too, Linda, things that have actual real intended use that can solve a problem. And speaking of solving a problem, the other panel was asked how this case would end. Do you know how much time we have left? I don't know how much time we have left.
I don't.
So, thank you guys. We're already running over, but you guys have got another 12 minutes, 10, 12 minutes if you want to take that time.
I'd certainly want to take just a few minutes and get our take on the case. And is that okay, Linda?
Yeah, that'd be great, because there's no one who has followed the Ripple case more than you and DAI, and we all want to hear your perspective about it.
Well, look, I don't know what's going to happen, and I can't wait to hear all these legal analysts chime in now that the final submissions have been made, right? I am reminded of John Deaton, Jeremy Hogan have said multiple times, it's not as simple as win or lose. It could be a split decision, and it could come out any one of a couple dozen ways, right? Which is pretty remarkable. My personal thought is this. My personal thought is whatever they do, I don't believe that the judge is going to harm the full-scale intended use of XRP. Will there be a fine? Will there be some kind of determination where the SEC can claim a win and Ripple can certainly get a victory too? Okay, you know what I mean? That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But for me, it's really about two things that I want to answer for myself. Is does XRP get through the gate the way it did with the Treasury? Because the Treasury ruled back in 2015 that it was a virtual currency. Do we get that really frees us up, I believe, and lets US adoption take place? But there's the pressure of 95% of the customer base of Ripple comes from the other side of the world, and they already consider it money. That is a lot of pressure if the US doesn't get this right, because the rest of the world's not going to stop using it because the SEC doesn't think it's money, and that's just something to think about there. But the other part of this is what does it mean for us as retail investors, right? Will retail investors be able to continue to get this asset after a ruling? Will it just simply go back on the exchanges? Will it be a accredited investor type asset purchase? I don't know, but I mean, I think these things are very real questions to want to find the answers to for this case.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with you about FinCEN in 2015 already determined that Ripple was a currency. The other thing is the Hinman emails have such incriminating evidence of corruption by the SEC that I don't know how the SEC would have any leverage once Ripple got those emails and saw what was in them. And apparently it's even worse than what we could ever imagine is what they've told us. So I think that there's a highly likely chance that Ripple will win the lawsuit. And I just don't see that even a fine could come into it, because once you see the corruption that's there in black and white, and you see probably a targeted attack against them and toward helping Bitcoin and Ethereum have a free pass, maybe, because of some major bank who might have put them up to that. And if you want to know more about that, check out your channel on DAI talking about ETHgate. But I just think that, the chances are really good that Ripple's going to prevail. And, I just think that once they get that clarity, it's going to be really, really good for them and for the whole industry.
I do too, to not harm the full scale intended use of the asset, right? Or Ripple's suite of products that's complemented by the use of the digital asset XRP, and what that's going to do for the velocity of money and to unlock so much dormant capital around the world. Really wonderful to talk with you, Linda. I'm going to throw it back to Karim unless you have a final word.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Back to you, Karim.
Already to me? Here you go. You have a question on the Q&A. Linda and Brad, when was the first time you invested in XRP? Did you buy Bitcoin first and then stumble on XRP? It was nice meeting you in LA, Linda. You are essential to the XRP community. And this is from Eric Kim.
Oh, thank you, Eric. I first bought XRP in the summer of 2020. So I was a little late to the space. I was very against Bitcoin. I was listening to a lot of media about the bad uses of Bitcoin, if you will. But I identified that blockchain was something that was a technology that I really liked. But no, I've never invested in Bitcoin. And once I started learning about XRP and then the ISO 20022 cryptos, then I brought that into my VIP investing group and onto the podcast, and then eventually wrote the book about it. So it was just one of the most exciting investment opportunities I've ever seen of anything, even investing back in the internet days, early days, stocks, bonds, real estate, you name it. This, I think, is going to be the most exciting opportunity we've ever seen in our lifetimes.
Absolutely. And for me, just very quickly, it's 2017 for me. And like a lot of other people, I was in traditional investment groups. I was investing in things, and then I kept hearing about the Bitcoin. And I'm like, what is a Bitcoin? And as everyone does, you start down this rabbit hole, and it didn't take me long because it was either like first or second market cap at that point with I'm sorry, second or third market cap for XRP at that point, because at the time there early on, XRP was number 2. It was actually ahead of Ethereum in market cap. But I found XRP, and when you find Ripple XRP, and then I quickly after that found that they were working alongside of the Fed and things of that nature for faster payments, and it was a done deal for me when I saw that. It was a no-brainer. And then it gets worse from there. Once you start looking into it, you just become obsessed.
So a final question before we move on to the next panel. Brad and Linda, do you have any thoughts you'd be willing to share here about our chances of us early retail speculators being able to hold on to our XRP, XLM versus some sort of government intervention, confiscation buyback?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the government confiscation theory. If the government does take possession, it would have to offer fair market value, which is why Jimmy Valley has been trying to establish a high fair market value for XRP. It's not that he necessarily thinks it's going to happen, but if it did happen, then he's trying to, set the bar for what the real value would be, which is based on the entire debt system, replacing the whole US dollar and all of the debt, and taking all of that into account. He first, came up with 35,000 in XRP. Now it's somewhere around 50,000 in XRP because of all the debt that's been created. So it's not that he necessarily thinks that's going to happen, and I really don't think that that's going to happen. However, I don't think it hurts to be able to go through all the different valuation theories and really put a price on what XRP could truly be in the future, because I think it's much more than we're being led to believe. We see this 40-cent price and we think, that's a real price. I don't think it is. So Brad, what do you think?
I think very quickly, I concur with Linda. I don't think it's something that's likely to happen, but I'm very grateful for Jimmy Valley putting it together and proposing it, because there is an issue and an argument, I believe, that could be made for what is the true fair market value of XRP. We don't know everything. We certainly realize they're under NDAs. And if there were to be some kind of restrictive buyback, whether it happened through whatever channel it would be, to take action on something like that, I think that sets the stage for an argument for any kind of a class action. It's kind of like a CYA approach to me, right? Like, I mean, it's just trying to make sure that if the community needs evidence to prove that we've had more knowledge than we've been given, he's trying to make the case for that, and I love him for it. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Linda. This has been amazing. We appreciate your insights. It's always good to listen to the experts and the people doing the research. What we hear over and over again, if you want to be good at anything, pay attention to the details, pay attention to what you do, spend the time and learn it. I think what we've learned over the last few days and from experiences that you need to spend the time. If you follow hype, you're probably going to end up in a lot of trouble. So listen to Linda P. Jones's podcast, listen to Brad Kimes, watch him on YouTube. If this is interesting to you, you learn a lot, but do your own research and make sure you're making investments and decisions that are based on the well-being for yourself, your family, and what's important to you. And follow your passion, follow your roots. Don't get caught up in the hype. A lot of people do, and oftentimes we get stuck up with a bad outcome. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Brad and Linda,